What do you do when the woman who's supposed to welcome you as family stabs you in the back in front of everyone you love? At my baby shower, surrounded by balloons and a towering cake, my mother-in-law, Diane, raised a glass and tore me apart with a single sentence, her voice dripping with venom as she mocked me before 80 guests. The crowd laughed, my cheeks burned, but that wasn't the worst. She'd planned every detail to humiliate me, from forgetting my mom in photos to flaunting her control over my special day. I was 7 months pregnant, dreaming of a family filled with love, only to feel like an outsider in her world. But here's the thing. I'd found a secret, a brittle letter hidden in her attic that could shatter her perfect image. As Diane basked in her triumph as over 80 guests gasped, my cheeks burned. But that wasn't the worst. She'd planned every detail to humiliate me, from forgetting my mom in photos to flaunting her control over my special day. I was 7 months pregnant, dreaming of a family filled with love, only to feel like an outsider in her world. But here's the thing. I'd found a secret, a brittle letter hidden in her attic that could shatter her perfect image. As Diane basked in her victory, I decided it was time to fight back. What I did next left her speechless and her precious reputation in ruins. I'm Sue, 29, and for the last 3 years I've been trying to crack the code to my mother-in-law Diane's heart. From the day I met her, she made it clear I wasn't her pick for her son, Mark. I'd talk about my job as a graphic designer, and she'd purse her lips like my words were sour. At family dinners, she'd cut me off to rave about Mark's ex, Claire, who apparently lit up a room. Once, during Thanksgiving, she accidentally tipped a glass of red wine onto my white dress, her apology so thin it barely covered her smugness. I laughed it off, mopping up the stain, telling myself it was just her way. Time would fix things, right? I wanted to believe that. Mark and I were building something real. A cozy house with a creaky porch, a scruffy dog named Rusty, and now our first baby girl on the way. I'd lie awake at night, one hand on my belly, picturing our daughter giggling in her grandmother's arms. That hope kept me going, even when Diane's coldness stung. I kept trying to bridge the gap. I'd bring homemade cookies to her house, ask her about her garden, anything to find common ground. She'd nod, her smile tight, and change the subject. Still, I didn't give up. When I got pregnant, I thought, this is it. A baby will bring us together. So I invited Diane to help plan my baby shower. I wanted it to be a moment we could share, something to soften the years of tension. She agreed, her eyes sharp, and suggested hosting it at her massive estate instead of my little backyard. It's more fitting, she said, and I felt a flicker of gratitude. Maybe this was her way of opening up. I let her take charge, picking a pastel theme I didn't care for, choosing a caterer who used shrimp, which I'm allergic to, and filling the guest list with her country club friends instead of mine. I swallowed my unease. Mark, always the peacemaker, squeezed my hand and said, "She's just excited, Sue. Let her have this." I nodded, wanting to believe him, but a knot tightened in my chest. Looking back, I see how naive I was. I thought Diane's control was about love, about welcoming her first grandchild. I'd spent years telling myself, if I just try harder, she'll warm up to me. I wanted our daughter to grow up with a grandmother's love, not the sharp edges I'd felt. So I showed up to the shower, 7 months pregnant, in a flowy dress ready to celebrate. The backyard was a sea of pink balloons, a towering cake at the center, and for a moment I let myself hope. 80 guests milled around, their chatter loud, and I smiled, thinking maybe Diane and I were finally turning a corner. I didn't know then that she'd planned something else entirely, a day designed to cut me down in front of everyone. As I stood there, clutching a glass of water, Diane raised her glass to toast, and everything changed. Have you ever been underestimated or dismissed despite knowing your true worth? Share your experience in the comments below. The baby shower was supposed to be my moment, a day to celebrate the little girl growing inside me. I'd spent weeks imagining it. Friends laughing, my mom beaming, Mark's hand on my shoulder as we opened tiny onesies. But Diane had other plans. She'd taken over every detail, turning my vision into her showcase. The pastel pink theme felt like a stranger's choice, not mine. The menu was packed with shrimp dishes I couldn't touch because of my allergy. Worst of all, the guest list was a parade of her country club friends, their perfume heavy in the air, while most of my friends were left off the invite. I told myself it was fine, that Diane was just eager to play grandmother. Mark echoed that, his voice soft. "She means well, Sue. Let's just enjoy it." I wanted to believe him, so I pushed down the unease and stepped into her sprawling backyard, my dress swaying over my 7-month belly, ready to smile through it all. The setup was flawless. Pink balloons bobbed in the breeze, a 3-tiered cake gleamed under the sun, and tables overflowed with delicate pastries. For a fleeting second, I thought maybe I'd misjudged her. Then Diane clinked her glass, calling for a toast. 80 pairs of eyes turned to her, and my stomach tightened. She stood tall, her pearl necklace catching the light, and raised her champagne. "To Sue," she began, her voice carrying across the crowd. "Who's done her best to fit into our family, even if she'll never quite measure up to Mark's potential." A chuckle rippled through her friends. My water glass felt heavy in my hand, my cheeks hot as their laughter dug into me. I stood there, exposed, like I'd been stripped bare in front of strangers. I forced a smile, nodding as if it was a joke, but inside I was crumbling. How could she say that? I thought, my heart pounding. In front of everyone? It didn't stop there. Diane moved through the party like a queen, each step calculated to push me further into the shadows. When it was time for family photos, she posed with Mark, her sister, and her cousins, her arm looped through his. My mom, who'd driven 3 hours to be there, stood awkwardly to the side. "Oh, we'll get you in the next one," Diane said, waving her off, but the next one never came. Later, she handed out party favors, little bags of candies with tags that read, "Diane's grandbaby," in curly script. Not Sue and Mark's, just hers. She even told a story to a cluster of guests about Mark's ex, Claire, throwing a far more memorable baby shower for her niece, her eyes flicking to me as she spoke. Each jab landed like a pebble, small but sharp, piling up until I could barely breathe under their weight. My best friend Tara saw it all. She pulled me aside near the dessert table, her voice low. "She's out of line, Sue. You can't let her get away with this." I nodded, my throat tight, but I didn't know what to say. I'd spent years being polite, brushing off Diane's slights to keep the peace. But standing there, surrounded by her snickering friends, I felt something shift. The hope I'd clung to that Diane would one day accept me was gone. I wasn't just hurt. I was angry. My hands trembled as I thanked guests, my smile a mask. Diane stood by the gate, waving them off, her face glowing with triumph. She thought she'd won, that she'd shown everyone I didn't belong. But she didn't know what I'd found weeks ago, tucked in her attic among old photo albums, a letter that could change everything. As I watched her bask in her moment, I knew I was done playing nice. I wasn't going to let her ruin this day without a fight. Have you ever had someone ruin a special moment for you? What did you do in the heat of the moment? Drop your thoughts in the comments and share your story with us. As Diane's guests drifted away, their laughter still echoing in my ears, I stood in her manicured garden, my hands resting on my belly. The pink balloons swayed above the empty tables, and the cake, barely touched, slumped under the afternoon sun. Diane was by the gate, her pearl earrings glinting as she waved off her friends, her face alight with satisfaction. She thought she'd won. Her toast, her jabs, her perfectly planned day had all worked to push me down, to remind everyone I'd never be enough for her son. My chest burned with the weight of her words, but something else stirred inside me too. I wasn't just the polite daughter-in-law anymore, swallowing her slights to keep the peace. I'd found something she didn't know about, something that could break the throne she sat on. And standing there, watching her bask in her victory, I made a choice. I wasn't going to let her walk away unscathed. Weeks earlier, I'd been in Diane's attic, helping her sort through dusty photo albums for a family scrapbook she wanted to make for Mark. I'd thought it was a chance to bond, flipping through faded pictures of Mark as a kid, his gap-toothed grin beaming from every page. Then, tucked between two albums, I found it. A thin, yellowed envelope, the paper brittle under my fingers. The letter inside was handwritten, the ink smudged but legible. As I read it, my breath caught. It wasn't just a note. It was a confession, one that stripped away the flawless image Diane had built over decades. The words laid bare a truth she'd buried, one that could unravel the respect she commanded from her family, her friends, her entire world. I slipped the letter back into the envelope, my hand steady, and didn't say a word. Diane had no idea I'd seen it, no clue I held a weapon sharper than any of her cutting remarks. Now, in the garden, that secret pulsed in my mind. I could have marched up to her right then, letter in hand, and watched her face crumple as I read it aloud to the straggling guests. Part of me wanted to see her falter, to hear her stammer as her perfect world cracked. But another part, calmer and colder, whispered to wait. A public outburst would be messy, and she'd twist it, paint me as the unhinged pregnant woman. No, I needed to be smart. I'd let her think she'd won, let her strut through her victory lap. The real blow would come later, when she least expected it, in front of the same crowd she'd used to humiliate me. I tightened my grip on my glass, the plan forming like a spark catching fire. Mark found me near the dessert table, his brow creased with worry. "You okay, Sue? I know Mom's toast was a lot. She's just excited about the baby. Don't let it ruin your day." His voice was gentle, but it grated against the resolve hardening inside me. He didn't know about the letter, didn't see the way his mother's every move was a calculated strike. I nodded, forcing a small smile. "I'm fine," I said, my tone light, but my mind was elsewhere. Mark might want peace, but I was done bending to keep it. Diane had crossed a line, and I wasn't going to let her rewrite my story. As I watched her laugh with a lingering guest, her confidence unshaken, I felt a surge of power. She thought she knew me, thought I was weak, easy to dismiss. But I held her secret, and with it, the key to her downfall. The garden felt quieter now, the party winding down, but my heart raced with purpose. Diane's smug expression as she waved goodbye was a challenge, one I was ready to meet. She'd spent years looking down on me, and today she'd tried to bury me. But I wasn't the naive girl she thought I was. I'd play her game, smile through the pleasantries, and wait for the moment to strike. When I did, it would be on my terms, and she'd never see it coming. Have you ever been in a situation where you knew a secret that could change everything? What did you do with that power? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. The baby shower was nearly over, the last guests lingering with their goodbyes as the sun dipped low. Diane stood by the cake, chatting with her country club friends, her laughter sharp and confident. She thought the day was hers, that she'd cemented her place above me with every cutting word and calculated slight. I'd played along, thanking guests, smiling through the sting of her toast and the party favors claiming my daughter as her own. But now, with the crowd thinning and Diane still glowing in her triumph, it was time. I wasn't the same woman who'd walked into her garden hours ago, hoping for a truce. The letter in my pocket, its words seared into my memory, gave me a power she couldn't imagine. I took a breath, my hand steady, and stepped toward the center of the lawn. "Excuse me, everyone," I called out, my voice clear, cutting through the chatter. Heads turned, glasses paused mid-sip. Diane's eyes flicked to me, her brow creasing slightly, but she kept her smile. I faced the remaining guests, about 30 of her closest allies, plus Mark's cousins and my mom, who stood quietly near the back. "I've always tried to be part of this family," I began, my tone calm but firm. "I thought today would bring us closer, but maybe it's time you all knew the truth about perfection." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Diane's smile faltered, her hand tightening on her glass, I pulled the folded letter from my pocket, its edges worn, and held it up. I found this a few weeks ago, helping Diane sort photos. It's revealing. I unfolded the paper, my heart steady despite the weight of every eye on me. It's a letter, I said, from Diane's sister-in-law written 30 years ago. I started reading, my voice carrying across the garden. Diane, you can't keep pretending it didn't happen. You took the money from your father's estate, told everyone he left nothing, and let your brother struggle while you built your perfect life. Gasps broke out, sharp and sudden. I kept going. You lied to the family, said you earned it all yourself, but we know the truth. You broke us to make yourself shine. The words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Faces turned to Diane, wide-eyed, some whispering to each other. My mom's hand flew to her mouth, and Mark, standing nearby, froze, his jaw tight. Diane's face drained of color. That's not true, she stammered, stepping forward, her voice shrill. You don't know what you're talking about, Sue. But her eyes darted to the guests, betraying her panic. I held her gaze unflinching. It's in your sister-in-law's handwriting, I said, lifting the letter higher. She wrote about the family meetings, the arguments, how you shut them out. You've spent years acting like you're above everyone, but it was built on a lie. The crowd's murmurs grew louder. One of Diane's friends, a woman in a wide-brimmed hat, stepped back, her face twisted in shock. Mark's cousin whispered something to her husband, both staring at Diane like they were seeing her for the first time. Diane opened her mouth, then closed it, her hands trembling. She looked around, searching for an ally, but the faces that once adored her were cold, questioning. You're twisting it. She tried again, weaker now, but no one stepped in to defend her. The garden, once her stage, was now her cage. I lowered the letter, my voice softening but sharp. I wanted to be family, Diane. But you made today about tearing me down. Now everyone knows who you really are. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the rustle of balloons in the breeze. Diane stood alone, her shoulders sinking, the queen of her perfect world dethroned in front of the people she'd fought to impress. I turned to the guests, my heart pounding but light. Thank you for coming, I said, my smile genuine for the first time all day. This is a day I'll never forget. As I walked away, Mark trailing behind, I felt taller, stronger. I'd done more than expose Diane. I'd reclaimed my place, my voice. She'd underestimated me, and now she'd never forget it. Have you ever had the chance to expose someone's hidden truth? How did it feel? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. The garden was empty now, the balloons sagging in the evening chill. I sat on the porch of Diane's estate, my hands cradling my belly, the weight of the day settling over me. The letter, still in my pocket, felt like a shield I no longer needed. I'd stood up to Diane, laid bare her secret in front of her world, and watched her crumble. The shocked faces of her friends, the whispers spreading like wildfire. It wasn't just a moment of triumph, it was freedom. For years, I'd bent over backward to fit into her family, swallowing her jabs to keep peace. But now, I'd rewritten the rules. As the last guest's car pulled away, Mark joined me, his face heavy with something new, understanding. I didn't know it was this bad, Sue, he said, sitting beside me, his voice low. The toast, the photos, all of it. I'm sorry I didn't see it before. His hand found mine, warm and steady. I looked at him, seeing the man who'd always tried to bridge the gap between his mother and me. I wanted to believe she'd come around, I admitted. But today I realized she never would. I had to do something. He nodded, his jaw tight. You were incredible. I'll talk to her. She needs to know this stops now. His words grounded me, a promise that we were in this together, building a family on our terms. Diane didn't take it quietly. The next morning she called, her voice sharp over the phone. "You've ruined everything, Sue. You'll regret this." I stood in our kitchen, Rusty snoring at my feet, and let her words wash over me. "I told the truth, Diane," I said, my tone even. "That's all." I hung up, a small smile tugging at my lips. It wasn't about winning or crushing her. It was about standing up for myself, for the life Mark and I were creating. For once, her threats felt hollow. She'd spent decades crafting an image of perfection, but the letter had peeled it away. Her friends, once loyal, were distant now, their calls unanswered. Mark's cousins texted him, asking questions about the estate money, the family fracture Diane had hidden. Her grip on them was slipping, and she knew it. In the weeks that followed, Diane tried to claw back control. She hosted a brunch, inviting the same crowd, but half didn't show. She sent Mark a long email, claiming I'd misunderstood the letter, but he didn't buy it. "She's scrambling," he told me, shaking his head. "She's not used to this." I felt a quiet relief, like a knot in my chest had finally loosened. I'd spent so long trying to please her, hoping for a place in her world. Now I didn't need her approval. Our daughter would grow up with love, mine, Mark's, my mom's. Diane could be part of that, but only if she changed. For the first time, I wasn't afraid to set that boundary. Sitting on our creaky porch one evening, Mark and I talked about the future. "We're going to be okay," he said, his arm around me as Rusty chased fireflies in the yard. I leaned into him, feeling the baby kick, and knew he was right. I'd faced Diane, not with anger, but with truth, and it had set me free. The woman who'd walked into that baby shower, desperate for acceptance, was gone. In her place was someone stronger, ready to protect her family, no matter who stood in the way. As the stars came out, I could finally breathe, knowing I'd fought for us, and won. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Let me know in the comments and share this story with anyone who's ever had to stand up to family drama. We'll catch up in the next one. Thank you for listening.